Hello everyone and welcome to my guide for Eden's vs. Furor Savage, also known as E6S. Now you will need to establish a couple of things before you start this fight, the first of which is corner partners. You will want your tanks at northwest and northeast corners with your healers at the southwest and southeast, and then a damage dealer paired with each tank and healer. This is going to be used for a number of things throughout the fight. Chief among them is air bump. You can think of this the same as enumeration in some previous fights. It works the same as it does in normal mode Furor, where someone needs to be paired with each person that gets marked for air bump to keep that person from getting launched way into the air. You'll also need to establish a anchor. We have a 2 marker for our anchor here. That is going to be used during conflag phase of the fight, and I will explain that further once we get to that portion. You will need one of your damage dealers to be an anchor to make that part of the fight a little bit easier. As we pull the encounter here, the first thing that's going to happen, as has been the case with many fights in the past, we're going to turn the volume off there. As has been the case with many fights in the past, is a raid-wide attack. So make sure you're putting up as much mitigation as you can for that pre-pull, and then get ready for raid-wide damage. It happens about 5 globals into the encounter, so keep that in mind. And there it is, Super Storm, our raid-wide. And after that, everyone's going to need to get to their corners that we again established beforehand. The 1 marker is used to mark where I myself am heading with my partner Shino. She's going to do a point-blank AoE, and I also want to point out these orbs around the arena. You can see one right there. There's another similar one on the opposite side off the map here. Those orbs are generated by occluded front, and they are what is creating these line AoEs here. Now, you obviously don't want to be standing in that line AoE to not take damage from it, but also any tethers that are created throughout this fight, including these tethers right here that are now tied to our damage dealers, going across that line AoE with that tether will cut the tether, which will usually cause dangerous things to happen. Someone else getting unexpectedly marked for the tether and taking multiple mechanics at once. It could also just instantly kill the tethered person. Just do not cross over that line, cutting the tether, except for one very specific exception, and I'll get to that when we're there. Another note on these tethers is that these current ones are marking damage dealers for a conal attack that will be happening in their direction. This is another reason that we want to be paired with our partners here, because it is almost impossible to completely avoid those conal attacks, so you're just making sure that you get hit by only one of them. Because each damage dealer is marked for these conal attacks, your tanks and healers are free to be paired wherever they want. I'm making that special note because should a tank or healer die at any point before one of those cones, they can just go and stack with any damage dealer, even if it means 2 tanks or a tank and a healer, or 2 healers are at the same corner. They're still only going to get hit by 1 cone and you're fine. A damage dealer, on the other hand, going to pair with another damage dealer here will get multiple people hit by 2 cones and probably kill them. So keep that in mind. Now, after we run out for this Storm of Fury point blank, we're going to rush back in for an air bump. And again, you want to stay partnered for that. There's the air bump circles going out, and you can see they are around each of our damage dealers in this case. Air bump will always either mark each damage dealer or it will mark each tank and healer, so your partners can be good for every air bump that goes out, for the most part. And there is an exception later in the fight during conflag phase, and as I said, we'll get to that when it comes. Now we stack with these partners for this air bump. We're going to get hit by it, and then we're going to get out of the subsequent puddle. And the next thing that's going to happen is Ferro Storm. Now the Ferro Storm generates 2 blades on either side of the boss that we need to dodge out of. They create rather large conal attacks, and they are indicated by a couple of things. You can look for the blade itself, which of course is that thing there and that thing there. You can also look for the wind that issues out from each blade. And I'm going to back it up a little bit so that you can watch for that really quickly here. I also want to note that when Ferro Storm is coming out, it may be difficult to see those blades at first. If you're just not seeing one, it could be pointed directly at you. And because it is rather transparent, you won't see it at that angle. Just rotate around the boss and it should pop up. But here she goes with Ferro Storm, and you can kind of see that wind being pulled in on either side, and that's your indicator to get out of that direction. About 2 globals later, she's going to do her knockback puddle. Make sure that you hit your knockback prevention and then get out of it. As you can see, Shino here did get knocked back. He was still able to get into the puddle in time to not screw me over. But play it safe, hit that knockback prevention, and keep everyone in the same spots. So we get hit by that air bump, and then we come back in. You're going to want to try and migrate to your markers here, because she's going to cut the room in half. Here it is, vacuum slice. Right there, she's casting it, and of course it creates this rather large line AoE in the middle of the room, and you cannot walk into that line or you will die. This is why we pair up with our corner partners here, to make sure that you're on the same side as your partner for mechanics that are incoming. So the next thing she's going to do is cast Occluded Front. This will create either 3 or 4 orbs on each side of the arena. There they are. The way you can tell which pattern you have on your side is if you have a single orb in the center of your side, you have the 3 pattern. Of course, there's one more on the edge here, and there's another on this edge off the screen. And if you have orbs on either side of you, you probably have the 4 pattern as is indicated on the other side of the map here. Now, depending on which pattern you have, you're going to dodge it in a different way, and I will show you that in just a second here. We dodge out of the way, and these knockback arrows are what you're looking for as an indicator to dodge. Now, in our specific case, because we have the 3 pattern, we are using the edge of that arrow as an indicator of where we should go, and again, this knockback arrow is what we're looking for here. If this were the 4 pattern, you would want to stay at the very center of that arrow. Again, you're getting as close to the edge of the arena as you can without actually walking into it. As with most Savage encounters, if you touch the edge of the map, it will kill you. So just make sure you get as close as you can without actually walking into it. Use the corner of the arrow if it's the 3 pattern, the center of the arrow if it's the 4 pattern, and you will be safe. So we're going to keep playing that here. Knockback happens. Take note that it also knocked the orbs forward. That's why the center of that arrow is safe if you have the 4 pattern, because the orb itself will get knocked into the vacuum slice and disappear. And then as soon as those orbs explode, we now have a Ferro Storm blade here that is already spawned, and we are dodging Ferro Storm as we come back in to attack the boss here. That's the last mechanic that Garuda is going to use, and then she's going to jump away. You're looking to be at about 60% or lower on her health here as she's dropping, and then we have Ifrit drop. I'm going to rewind that for just a little bit here to show you Ifrit coming down. He does a proximity-like attack, an airship attack, if you will. And I want to note where we're all standing here. So you can see Jonin here is a red mage, and he's standing even further in than I am, almost at the center of the arena. And I want you to watch really closely how much damage he takes from this proximity attack. It barely touched him. It took like maybe a fifth of his health, standing at almost the center of the arena. The reason I'm making a note of that is if you're a melee damage dealer or something and you need to gap close after that proximity attack goes off, you can really stand within gap close range before it hits, and you'll be just fine. So I gap close onto the boss. The first thing he's going to do is his sort of tank buster. This happens as a threefold attack. The first thing he's going to cast is this Hands of Flame here. That Hands of Flame tethers a target. You can just barely see the tether going to Datras here. He's going to charge toward that tethered target, and he's going to leave an eruption down where that target was standing. Immediately after that, he'll start to cast Instant Incineration. That is the tank buster itself. It does high single target damage. You'll need to use personal mitigation for it. But the Hands of Flame charge is also going to cast a light-headed debuff on whoever is hit by that charge. And I do mean whoever's hit by that charge. So if someone is standing in the direction of the charged target, they'll get that light-headed debuff as well, and that's going to cause a number of issues. First of which, if you take high damage with that light-headed debuff, such as with the tank buster, it'll knock you into the air just like air bump would have. And then if you take charge damage, so if two people are too close together when the charges go out, you'll get stunned by the charge, and then you'll die from the subsequent eruption. So really make sure only the people who are tethered get hit for those charges, and you'll be fine. The way we make sure that the Instant Incineration target is not the same person that gets hit by Hand of Flame is my other tank here, Maddie, is going to provoke off me in a second during this Hands of Flame cast. And he's going to get hit by the Instant Incineration instead of me. So we'll see that happen in just a second here. There's the provoke. I've shirked him. Hands of Flame happens on me, the eruption's down, and Instant Incineration is on Maddie. Instant Incineration is very visible who it's on. You can see it by this arrow here. You can also see it by the circles around that target. It looks the same as the tank buster in Copied Factory, if you remember that one, on the second to last boss. But he's going to get hit by high single target damage. He's going to come over to the boss and start attacking him in melee range away from the rest of the group in order to not get them clipped by that Instant Incineration. This is cleaving damage, so really no one can stand near the tank getting tank buster. The next thing that's going to happen after Instant Incineration is a Meteor Strike. That will happen on whoever is the main aggro target when the Instant Incineration cast finishes. The Meteor Strike targets that person, and then a few seconds later, Ifrit will jump on them, doing very high cleaving damage. Because it happens at the end of the Instant Incineration cast, you can have the first tank provoke back at this point to bait the Meteor Strike in a different direction from the Instant Incineration tank. This is an adjustment you would make if something went wrong where one of your tanks died perhaps and got res just in time to provoke for this. You would do that if you know that your instant incineration tank has a light-headed debuff on them, whereas your other tank does not. Or even if both tanks have light-headed on them, the person that's baiting the Meteor Strike isn't actually going to get hit by the instant incineration, so they're fine to bait that Meteor Strike away from the instant incineration tank. Again, you only would do that if for some reason something went wrong. But he's going to get over next to Ifrit, he's going to take that instant incineration damage, and of course Meteor Strike happens right where he was standing, and then we all get back to center here. There is a raid wide going out right here, and then after that people are going to get marked for Hands of Hell tethers. The Hands of Hell itself works similarly to the Hands of Flame, except there are 4 tethers going out, and I'm going to show you those in a second here. I'm going to use this as an example right here, if I can pause it in time. There you go. It happens a little too quickly, but you can see these 2 tethers here, tethered to our Love Diamond healer. All of our tanks and healers need to take those tethers off of her to spread them out in different directions in order to not have a single target get hit by multiple charges at once. You can, for this first Hands of Hell, have your healers and range damage dealers take each of the tethers south and spread them out in order to not lose any uptime there. This right here is the only instance in which you can do that if you're trying to greed a little bit more uptime. In every other occasion when the first Hands of Hell goes out, you will need your tanks and healers to take them, because the second Hands of Hell is going to happen immediately afterwards, and no one who just took a tether can then take another tether back to back, because of course they'll have that light-headed debuff, and that is exactly what we're trying to avoid. In most Party Finder groups, you're going to see the tanks and healers take the first set always to the north, and you're going to see damage dealers take the second set always to the south. That's what we're doing here, and I'll show you that playing out. So we all grab our tethers, and as you can see, we have 4 people marked up for tethers right here, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we drag them out to our sides. And he goes for the charge. Again, we spread out so that multiple people don't get hit by each charge, and you can also see it put that light-headed debuff on me, so I can't take another charge or instant incineration, as the case may be here. But that's it for that mechanic. The next thing that's going to happen is Strike Spark, which we lovingly dub soccer, or football for our friends across the pond. And he's going to spawn some clones around the room. And when you're looking for these clones, you're specifically looking for this guy right here. There will be one Ifrit that is pointed toward the center of the arena always, and he's going to kick his orb in that direction. Once you find that center kicker, you are looking to his sides for other side kickers. We're ignoring this one right here because, as you can see, he is pointed out toward the edge of the arena. He's faking us out, so he's not actually going to hit his orb because he's faced away from it. But as the camera pans around here, we'll notice one other Ifrit to the center kicker's other side that is a side kicker that's pointed directly toward the center kicker. So the first thing that's going to happen is center kicker is going to kick toward the center, and then the side kicker is going to kick his orb toward the center kicker, and that will leave that portion where this second Ifrit in the chain is as a safe zone. Now, there's always going to be a chain of at least 2. It is possible for a third Ifrit to be here that is kicking toward the side kicker for a chain of 3, in which case we would have gone toward the C marker. But since there's no Ifrit there, we're going toward 3. I call that out and everyone runs in that direction, and we're safe. As you can see, the explosions went off and none of us got hit by it because the safe zone was created by that Ifrit kicking the ball away. Now, the next thing that's going to happen is you're going to see me gap close onto the boss here. If you are the tank that currently has aggro on the boss, I highly recommend using your gap closer here as soon as these explosions go off. That will allow you to keep the boss centralized to make positioning for this next portion a bit easier. As soon as we run in here, our damage dealers are going to start migrating toward the south end of the map because they have to take their hands of hell and spread them out in that direction. My off tank, of course, did not do that gap closer, so Ifrit got a little mispositioned, but he drags him back into position and we're fine. So those hands of hell go off, and the next thing that's going to happen is Tank Buster. This Tank Buster here is exactly why tanks cannot take the second set of tethers. That's also a similar thing that occurs throughout the rest of the fight, so you will need your tanks to take the first tether each time in order for their lightheaded debuff to be wiped off in time to be able to take this Tank Buster naturally. Now, as you can see, I've already provoked. I'm going to take the instant incineration after Maddie gets hit there, and I want you to watch my positioning really closely here. I'm staying on the boss and DPSing him while this instant incineration is going off, and you can also see that I even stood inside of his hitbox, and we're fine. It's still plenty of way for the Meteor Strike to occur away from the rest of the group, and it's easier for melee DPS to keep uptime that way. So keep that positioning in mind if you're a tank on this fight, and then we go into duo phase with Ifrit and Garuda here. Now the first thing that's going to be cast in this phase is either Hated of the Vortex or Hated of the, I believe it's the Inferno on Ifrit there. I'm sorry, Hated of Embers. That is going to be raid-wide damage that marks up all of your party members with a debuff. They'll either get the, oh god, what is that debuff called? We're going to find out in just a second here once. So it is in fact called Hated of the Vortex or Hated of Embers. If you have the Hated of the Vortex debuff here, you're going to only be able to attack Garuda. If you have the Hated of Embers debuff right there, you're going to only be able to attack Ifrit. There will be 4 party members that get marked with each one. If you try to attack the target that you're not marked for, it will give you invulnerable messages. You're not going to be able to damage them at all. It chooses the target for Vortex or Embers based on proximity, so get close to the target you want to be attacking. One note I want to make here is that your melee damage dealers will probably want to be on Ifrit, because Garuda at one point in the fight does another Vortex slice, and her back will be in that line AoE, so that you can't really get positionals on her. So if melee DPS, prioritize Ifrit for that reason. Now the next thing that's going to happen is a Tank Buster. This Tank Buster can be handled one of 4 ways, and I'm going to list those off in order of preference. The first way to handle this is if you have a Paladin in your group, as I am. You can have the Paladin cover your Ifrit tank. In that way, the Ifrit tank is going to take the Hands of Flame charge. The eruption will happen under them, but the lightheaded debuff is actually going to go onto the Paladin covering that Ifrit tank. You have to position appropriately to not actually get hit by the charge if you're the Paladin in this case, but you'll take the lightheaded debuff, then your other tank can take the instant incineration naturally without getting knocked in the air, and that is of course the goal. The second way to handle this, as happens with most Party Finder groups, is there is going to be an occluded front line AoE that happens right after that Hands of Flame goes out, and you can just drag the Hands of Flame tether across that line AoE to get cut. This is the only time in the fight where you would intentionally cut a tether. Doing so will target a random other party member for that Hands of Flame charge. You're going to see me get targeted for it in just a second here, and that way the the tank with the Hands of Flame originally won't actually get hit by it, and so they're spared the lightheaded debuff in that way. The reason I don't like doing it this way personally is because targeting another party member at random means an eruption is going to happen in a random location, and you'll lose uptime by everyone having to move out of that eruption instead of putting that eruption in a set location away from the rest of the party on the original tank. And because we don't know who else is going to be targeted, it might be targeting someone who is near the original tank anyway, and he's going to get that lightheaded debuff as is. Of course, you can avoid that by everyone getting away from the original tank ahead of time. The third way to do this, though, is to pull each boss the same way that we did in this fight, where you have one tank that starts on both Garuda and Ifrit. That tank will also end on Ifrit, as you just saw, and they will have threat on both Garuda and Ifrit going into this fight. In that case, the tank who's supposed to be tanking Ifrit here can wait until the Hands of Flame starts casting on the Garuda tank in order to provoke at that point. That will leave the Garuda tank getting hit by the Hands of Flame charge, which will leave the Ifrit tank free to take that instant incineration completely unimpeded. The fourth and least preferable way to do this is to just use your invuln for the just have the Ifrit take all three of the attacks, the Hands of Flame charge itself, the instant incineration, and the Meteor Strike. They will have a lightheaded debuff on them. They will get knocked into the air with instant incineration, but if they invuln both the instant incineration and the Meteor Strike, they will of course still survive. This loses uptime for the tank getting knocked in the air, and it also means your invuln isn't available later in the fight for another mechanic we tend to prefer to have it for. But we'll get to that later. So you're going to see the tank actually cut his tether in our example. I put cover on him just in case anyway, because I didn't know what he was going to do. But yeah, he went and cut that tether. It goes Hand of the Flame charge on me instead, and you can see the eruption happen in the middle of the room there. Everyone had to run out of it, but they ran out of it just fine. And then we go into Vacuum Slice. Now I'm going to rewind this just a little bit to point out something. Vacuum Slice is going to either happen north to south or east to west. So if you stand in one of the corners, you can ensure you won't be getting hit by Vacuum Slice. You can ensure that you're going to be safe from Vacuum Slice. In order to have our entire group together, we all migrate toward the northwest corner in this direction here. You're going to see us gather around that one marker in order to all kind of be in that safe zone. And you'll also see, if I can just go forward just a little bit here, our off tank, why did that not pause in time? Our off tank, our Ifrit tank, is in that same corner, but he's toward the edge over here. That's gonna make sure that Meteor Strike itself happens way toward that edge, and it shouldn't be near anyone else kind of gathering around this one marker. You can literally choose any corner for this. Party finders just tend to pick the northwest corner for some strange reason. It really doesn't matter which corner you pick. But that puts us all on the same side for the vacuum slice portion of the fight, and then we all gather together. We're getting gathered together here because there's going to be an eruption that spawns under each individual player, and we're baiting those eruptions to the same spot so that we can easily dodge out of them. You can see Garuda's already cast Occluded Front. We have our 4-orb pattern in this case, and you can also see there's an Ifrit that has spawned right here. He's going to be kicking this orb back into our safe side, which means that the side that Ifrit is on is not safe for dodging these orbs. If you have the 3 pattern, your Ifrit is going to be on the center orb, kicking it either to the right or left. In this case, he is kicking it to our left, which would have made the right side safe if we were on that side of the arena. But because we have the 4 pattern, we're dodging in this direction to stay away from our Ifrit, and I'll show you that dodge in just a second. So we wait for those eruptions to go off, and then we get to our safe zone. There's the eruptions, and again, because we have the 4 pattern, we are looking to use this arrow here in order to get to the center of that arrow on the edge of the arena as an indicator of where it is safe for us to stand. You see me run kind of to that point and then get knocked forward, and everyone's safe from those orb explosions. Now you can also see that there is a Ferro Storm that has already spawned here, and we are dodging out of these blades on either side. That happens immediately after the vacuum slice Occluded Front each time, so just watch out for that Ferro Storm. And we're at the end of that portion of the fight. Again, if we back up just a little bit here, you can see that Garuda is below 50% health, which is what we're shooting for. And with our powers combined, they're going to turn into Raktapaksa. This phase change is some pretty high raid-wide damage, so mitigate it appropriately. We got all kinds of mitigation going, and we're just fine. But the first thing that's going to happen is tank and healer tethers from Hands of Hell, so make sure you get your tanks and healers stacking north to pick up those tethers. One thing I want to point out there is, because we're all immediately stacked in front of Susano, who gets marked for that tether there, we instantly pick up our tethers. There is no wait time. If you're in front of the target, which you can see based on this bouncing diamond here, if you're in front of that target before the tethers go out, you're going to instantly get marked for a tether yourself, which we will need to happen later in the fight, and I'll point out when that's the case. But we spread out our tethers, and then we get hit for our charges, and then we're back into the safe zone. You can see our safe zone here is pretty small. This is going to happen for that first one unless the tank pulls the boss further south before that goes out. But there's so little timing for it that I just keep him where he spawns in order to not create any confusion, in order to make sure that everyone's able to pick up their tether in time. But there's still enough space that everyone's able to stack in that safe zone just fine. But he's gonna start casting another Hands of Hell in a second here. This is the one that the damage dealers are gonna need to pick up. I do pull him south just before that one, as he was way too far north. Hands of Hell goes out, we all get into the safe zone, and then he's gonna start casting a raid-wide. Raid-wide attacks do happen very seldom in this fight, so you can heavily mitigate them every time. There's Infernal Hell. You're going to see I cast Reprisal and Divine Veil for each one. And yeah, we put up our raid-wide mitigation. There's an Addle on there as well, and we're just fine. Now Air Bump is marking the tanks and healers this time. You can see Air Bump has gone out here. And one thing I want to point out for this air bump is that Ferro Storm is happening at the same time. You can see that blade here. And because Ferro Storm's happening at the same time, it is on your tanks and healers to position their air bump in such a way that there's a gap in between them. We're looking for a gap here. So you're going to see me move slightly in this direction in order to create that gap to be able to dodge the subsequent Ferro Storm. And there it is, we have a gap, and we move into it. And Ferro Storm dodged just fine. Now we're going into another Strike Spark, otherwise known as Soccer. And again, we're looking for the Ifrit, which is pointed toward the center of the arena. And as I look to my left, there he is. Again, we have this Ifrit here, this Raktapaksa, that's pointed toward the center. And another Ifrit to his left, our right, that is pointed toward the first Ifrit. Again, this one to our left is faking us out as he's pointing outside of the arena. Okay? So again, the second Ifrit in the chain, this one right here, is our safe zone. There could have been a third Ifrit, but he's not there. So we're going to the second Ifrit in the chain. So I call out 3. We all run in the direction of the 3, and we're safe. I want to point out that he's already casting a Hands of Flame here. That again is the Tank Buster triple attack. So Maddie is going to provoke in just a second here, so that I don't get hit by the Instant Incineration with a lightheaded debuff. You're going to see me gap close into the boss immediately after that explosion goes out. That is so that the boss doesn't move, for one, but also so that lightheaded only happens on me. You can see I'm moving with the lightheaded debuff, and that's because I was the only one to gap close in, and Eruption happens in the center of the arena. The charge happens in the center of the arena to keep that lightheaded debuff on me and me alone. There is one other way this can be handled, and I'll show you that in a second. So as we all go to our safe zone here, I could have taken this tether and dragged it a little to the side after those explosions go off, and that would have had him avoid charging the rest of our group if I moved to a side that no one else moves to. This is a little risky as you don't have a lot of time to move after the explosions, and people could still potentially get clipped by it. The only way to really avoid people getting clipped by it here is to force yourself to take an explosion, but then you're taking an explosion and the Hands of Flame damage with a full up stack. You can still survive it as a tank, no problem, because tank privilege, but I find it a lot easier to just gap close onto the boss. The one benefit that moving to the side here does create is that it keeps the boss on the side of the arena so that you can bait instant incineration and Meteor Strike well away from the rest of the raid. And you can see, you're about to see why staying in the center of the arena did cause some issues for us with not baiting those away. You're going to see Maddie keeps the boss pointed toward the group, and our our Machinist actually got hit by that instant incineration cleave because Maddie didn't turn the boss. But it's easy enough to turn the boss there. He could have been standing over near this 2 or over near this 4, and he wouldn't have clipped anyone with that instant incineration, but instead he stood in the direction of the rest of the group and got someone killed. Just things to keep in mind. But again, that Meteor Strike is going to happen right where Maddie was standing when that instant incineration goes off. And so everyone gets out of that Meteor Strike area, and then there's going to be a knockback. Now typically, you would want to drag the boss out of the center of the map here, because we're going to have a knockback puddle in a second here. And you want melee damage dealers to be able to keep their uptime while that knockback is happening. But Maddie doesn't really move him. He ends up being inside of the knockback puddle, and we still can reach him, so it's not too big of a deal. I also want to point out that we are at full LB gauge here. It is possible, if you have a little bit slower DPS, to have that full LB gauge right as this last strike spark is going out. The soccer that happened just before this tank buster and knockback. But if you don't have it at that point, you can pop the melee LB here and still have a 2-bar LB at the end of the fight, so keep that in mind. So the knockback puddle goes out, we dodge out of it, we pop our knockback prevention, and Ifrit disappears. We're going into Conflag Strike phase here. Each of your tanks are going to be tethered to a healer, and each of your DPS are going to be tethered into 2 pairs. There will be 2 safe zones that are created, one on the east and one on the west side of the arena, to dodge out of the initial hit from Conflag Strike here. So typically in your party finder groups, you'll have your tanks and healers go to the west safe zone and your DPS go to the east safe zone. You're going to want to establish ahead of time which tank is going in what direction, so that your healers know where they're going based on what tank they are tethered to. Your tanks will need to move north and south in order to bait some cones that are going to come out from some twisters in those directions. I'll show you that in just a second. Your damage dealers are going to be dodging line AoEs from occluded front orbs, and they all need to be moving as a group. So we'll get to that in just a second. You can get 2 globals in before that safe zone spawns, and you're going to see me put in 1 more Goring Blade before hitting Requiem Scat to still be able to cast spells as I move away here. But these twisters here work the same as the ones from Living Liquid, if you remember him from Alexander. They're going to spawn conal attacks in the direction of the target which is closest to them. So you're going to see me get pretty close to that twister without actually running into it. I want to be as the tank on the opposite side of the twister as this orb, so you're seeing me head in this direction. That will ensure that the line AoEs from that orb do not target me. We want them targeting the damage dealers instead. So I cast my Requited Scat, I get to in position, and as you can see, I'm standing a little bit closer to the twister than Love Diamond that I'm tethered to is. But you can also see that this conal attack is friggin' huge. So we're really making sure that we're pointing it in direction off of the arena as much as we can here. And you also have hollowed ground up at this point, which is why I was saying we want to save our invulns for this part of the fight if at all possible. The Gunbreaker could also cast Super Bolide here. If you're doing a invuln with a shorter duration, such as Super Bolide or Holmgang, you may want to wait till after a couple of these blaze casts before you use it, so that it stays up through the last few attacks. But you can just as easily mitigate through it. This is just the highest amount of damage that's going to be put out single target throughout the fight, so your invuln is best used here. You can also see these line AoEs have already started going out, and the way damage dealers in most party finders handle this is they're going to move from east to west, one step at a time, dodging line AoEs each time. One thing I want to point out here is that if you catch DPS on either side of one of those lines who are tethered together, it will break their tether and kill both of them. So you want to make sure you're really not falling asleep at the wheel here. You want to make sure you're continuing to step one step at a time in that line, and by the time you get to the west side, you'll have dodged all the line AoEs and you'll be safe. Another way that this can be handled, and you'll see this in some party finders as well, is you can go from one side of the boss to the other and back to the first side if you want to keep dodging one side to the next and keep going back and forth. But baby steps is less movement and generally easier for people, so that's how you're going to see it handled most of the time. I believe it is a total of 5 of these cones that go off before we move back into the center. And right now is when I want to talk about that anchor that I was talking about earlier. So we marked, I believe, Meto, our ninja, as the anchor. So this air bump is where that comes into play. We marked 2 on Meto, meaning he's going in the direction of the 2 marker, and anyone tethered to him is stacking with him. The other 2 damage dealers, Jonin and Shino in this case, that were not tethered to Meto, they were tethered to each other, go toward the 3 marker. And because I was at the south end, I, as the south tank, went to the 4 marker and my healer came with me, and Maddie, the north tank, went to the 1 marker and his healer came with him. You'll notice there's also a donut AoE going out here, so we all get into this small safe zone here as we're pairing up for our air bump partners. It is a donut, there is a safe zone on the edge of the arena as well, but it's a lot more efficient to go into the center safe zone here. You could also do these air bumps in cardinal directions instead of inner cardinal directions. Just make sure you establish ahead of time what you're going to do so that everyone is on the same page. But we paired up beautifully there. We're all going to get hit by one air bump each with our partners, and we're safe. Immediately after that goes out, you can see that Conflag Strike has mere milliseconds before it hits, and we just got hit by an air bump. So you have got to move behind the boss ASAP as soon as that air bump goes off, because Conflag Strike is a 270-degree cone, so it's going to go off in this entire area here. So you really want to be behind the boss with that going out, and just don't get hit. Boom. Conflag Strike. We all get to our original markers again here, as there's another air bump that's going to go out. Following this air bump is going to be a point blank AoE. So we take the air bump to the face, and then we get the heck out of there. I also want to point out that, like the first point blank in the fight, there are once again line AoEs here, and we do not want to cut our tethers. As you can see, tethers have already gone out. So get out of that point blank without cutting your tether, and survive these cones here. Now immediately after these Storm of Fury cones, there's going to be more raid-wide damage, so mitigate appropriately from the Infernal Howl. And then you will want your tanks and healers to stack north once again for another Hands of Hell cast. Now, with this Hands of Hell, there's also going to be occluded front line AoEs, so we can't cut these tethers. That also means we don't have a lot of room to spread out, so instead of going all to the north side, we instead spread out in our corners. The damage dealers can stay stacked south in order to be safe from those original Hands of Hell charges. And they're going to want to be south at this portion for their own Hands of Hell anyways. Now, one thing I want to point out here. This Hands of Hell is being cast at the same time as air bump. So you can see we have Hands of Hell going out, and we already have air bump on all of these targets. That means that you need to already have your Hands of Hell tether when you go to your corner partner to stack. This is one of those instances when, perhaps the only instance where it really matters, when you want to already be stacked in front of the person who gets marked by the Hands of Hell bouncing diamond as soon as it goes out. So you can see all of our damage dealers are already stacked south there. They're going to get that Hands of Hell as soon as it goes out, and then they go to their air bump partners. Now, there is a lot happening at once here. The air bump is going to go off, right? And as soon as that air bump goes off, he's going to charge in the direction of each Hands of Hell tether. As soon as he charges in the direction of each Hands of Hell tether, there's going to be an eruption that happens under them. There's an even bigger circle than the air bump. In order to dodge all of that, and then get into the safe zone, and not have your tanks and healers get hit by those charges, your tanks and healers need to rotate. It doesn't matter what direction they rotate in, they just need to rotate into a safe zone. So I can either go that way, or I could go this way to be in a safe zone. You're going to watch me go to the left because I'm already slightly to the left of my partner, and it just makes a lot more sense for me to go that way. Because it doesn't matter which way you go, you can kind of try and eye the tethers and see which one has a bigger gap for an easier safe zone. But if you just kind of originally fake to one side as is, and move as soon as that air bump hits, you should be safe. The tethers are going to drag their tether outward, directly out from the air bump, in order to not drop those eruptions in the safe zone that's going to be created by the Hands of Hell charges. So let's see all of that unfold in just a second here. You're going to see me move slightly to the left for my safe zone. My Shino partner is going to move outward. He gets hit by the eruption, and we all go into the safe zone in the center. Maddie died there. Let me show you why Maddie died. So watch Maddie here. Again, Maddie's this gunbreaker right here. You're going to see him be a little late to move. You really want to move as soon as that air bump hits. There is no time for error here. Just hit and move. You'll see I got to my safe zone before the puddle marker was even created, and Maddie still hasn't moved yet. So he's going to get hit by the Hands of Hell charge. Boom. He's stunned and he dies from the air bump interruption. And because Maddie's died, I'm going to take a Hands of Hell followed by a instant incineration, and I'm going to get knocked into the air. This is another example where if that res was quick enough, Maddie could have provoked while the instant incineration cast was happening and baited the Meteor Strike away from the rest of the group. Instead, one of our healers took aggro, and is that what happened? Wait a minute. So let's back up a little bit here. Alright, so Maddie did provoke in time. But, okay, so right now, Maddie has threat. But he has threat right next to the rest of the healers, and you're going to see two of our healers die as I come back down here. So he properly baited the Meteor Strike away, but he forgot to move before baiting that Meteor Strike, and he got our healers killed. He had the right idea, just the wrong positioning. Now, all that's going to happen at this point is a couple of Ferro Storms, which you can easily dodge, and then the boss is going to teleport to the north side of the arena, and he's going to cast one last Conflag Strike right after a knockback puddle, and that is the Enrage. Now, this last Conflag Strike has a very quick cast time. If you don't have him below 3%, as he goes into it, you're not going to kill him in time. You're going to see we have him at 2% and still barely get him down before he does the cast. But this is the Enrage. If you get hit by this, you're dead. We just barely get him down in time and we're fine. And our DPS was that tight because we lost a tank and both healers. But because Ferro Storm happens, is all that's happening at the end there. All of the damage is avoidable. At that part in the fight, your healers don't have to heal at all. They can just lay into the boss and do extra damage. So it all worked out just fine. But that's it for E6S explanation. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching. If you like what you see here and you'd like to see more Final Fantasy XIV content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Leave comments below if you have any questions whatsoever. I'm happy to answer them to the best of my ability. I also stream Final Fantasy XIV current endgame content pretty regularly. I will leave a link to my Twitch below as well. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm going to include a full viewing of the encounter with callouts for your viewing pleasure. Enjoy. First up, grade what? I'm actually online really late, Draft. I've been going at this for forever. Get to your markers. But astute observation. Move out. In and stack. Next is Ferro Storm. Good morning, Strat. Next is Knockback. Get to your markers. Watch save some. Move to safety. Next is Ferro Storm. Dodge blades. Next is Ifrit drop. Next is Tank Buster. It's an incineration on Gunbreaker. Next is Raid War. Tanks and healers in order with tethers. Next is Soccer. Looks like 3 is saved. 3. DPS south for DPS tether.
On Jonan?
Soccer is fun, isn't it? You ever been on a soccer team, Draft? Next is Tank Buster. It's an incineration on Tapra. And Duo Phase. You tried out but never made the team. That's the life of a gamer, I suppose. Joined a band instead, awesome. Start migrating toward 1. Side A is safe, stacks in it. Side 1 is safe, don't move yet. Get to safety. Dodge Ferro Storm. And Raktapaksa.
Thanks for the heads up.
Fun fact, I became a gamer in 2014, never played much video games growing up. Oh, okay, well, welcome to the gamer life. You are quite quite an addition to our cult. Tanks and healers north. Next is DPS tethers. DPS south.
Unclear.
It's all consuming. I would have been a gamer, but consoles and stuff were expensive. Making up for it as well. Good, good. Next is raid one. Get to your markers. Dodge Ferro Storm. Next is soccer. Looks like 3 is safe. Instant incineration on Gunbreaker.
I got machinist.
Knockback. If you were wondering whether this tank buster is a cleave or not, there's your answer. Tanks and healers west, DPS east, check tethers.
Shido, you with me?
Oh, good luck, Giraffe. Moving it. Get behind. Get to your markers. We're moving out after this air bump. Raid one. Tank and healer tethers north. DPS south. Tethers to corners. Next is DPS tethers. DPS tethers south. Get to your markers. Tanks and healers rotate. Safe zone. Get that tank res. Revoke as soon as you can. Like now. Oh, he's not up yet. Fuck. Dotos is gonna die. Nope.
Keep DPSing. It's gonna be 2 Ferro Storm anyway.
Dodge. Knockback. Alright, kill him.